One of the terms that came up during our journey was environmental justice. So we asked environmental scientist Akila Chapman of Drexel University's Academy of Natural Science to tell us more about it.
Environmental justice is actually something that is still being well defined, and I would say is not very correctly defined by the EPA and other government agencies. I would say that it's the interactions between people's identities in ways that they have been discriminated against and the way that they experience living in the world, particularly with the very physical environment. And so this has to do with more specifically issues of heat island effect and flooding in cities, but it also can be lack of clean access to water or lack of access to ancestral land. Well, justice, I would say, is a way of looking at the world and how can we right wrongs that are done. So looking at it through an environmental perspective is just one of the ways in which it affects people. So something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I actually just finished my capstone project about this, is the way that because this country as we know it post-colonial era has been shaped and built by slavery, how do those lasting impacts affect Black and brown people in this country today? And so my specific project was looking at how the plots that slaves were sometimes allowed to grow their own food on, how that in plantation has transported to where we are today with the city and, for example, community gardens. There's a big emphasis in science right now where people try to distinguish themselves and other beings as separate. And this tends to lead to a hierarchy where we view humanness as the top of that triangle. So we don't take into consideration the rights of the land, of the water, of other biota, of biodiversity as is. We have a hierarchy in the types of animals in which we care for. There are a lot of things that people could do. So I guess it's really a matter of the scale that you're looking at. So if you're asking what can you as an individual do to help the environment? You could not litter. You could pick up litter as you see it. If we want to think about things that are going to have more lasting change, it's not a one-person issue. There are a lot of entities, organizations, governments, military complexes that are wholly responsible for the amount of environmental degradation that we see today. And so it's a matter of not only just holding them accountable, but disenfranchising those systems so that they can't change what they're doing to look a different way, similarly to how the city is just another version of a plantation. There are people in power that don't want these things to happen, and they can give you a lot of reasons as to why it is or why it's not just or why it's financially feasible. But the fact of the matter is they've created a society in which we look at the value of money as more important than the value of life.
Apparently, Philadelphia now has an urban agriculture plan which recognizes how community farming can be a transformational act for the city. So this isn't exactly a brand new idea, even though not everyone may be on board just yet. We spoke to Soil Generation, one of the groups that co-authored the city's urban agriculture plan. Soil Gen is a coalition of Black and brown women who focus on farming and agroecology as a path for community healing and to regain community control of land and food.
My name is Zakia Elliott.
My name's Sonia Galabert.
Do you actually want to talk about the gourds?
Yeah, I can talk about the gourds. So at Soil Generation, we know that for our collective liberation of each other, ourselves, and the land, we have to have balance. So we organize our work into reform, radical, and revolutionary. Reform work is addressing the ongoing urgent reality through policy changes and institutional incremental change. Radical is about getting at the root of the problem. How do we pull out weeds from the root? So that's, drastically challenging and shifting power and resources. And then revolutionary is about what you want. It's not enough to know what you don't want. It's not enough to be fighting against something. What is the dream? What are we fighting for? What is the goal? I think imagination is probably the deepest revolutionary work that we do. But all three are necessary, and we try to have balance with all three, which can be hard because reform ends up calling our attention a lot because the urgent reality keeps going, right? So, yeah.
So Soil Generation was born out of the Garden Justice Legal Initiative, and we are an organization that focuses on food justice in the city of Philadelphia.
What makes soil generation different from a lot of organizations is that we are grassroots, which means the people who are organizing for solutions are also impacted by those issues. And so those voices are usually missing a lot in the rooms that are making decisions about the things that impact us. We've often been the only impacted people in the room. And so in terms of what the work looks like on a day-to-day, it might mean trying to join a meeting on a city level about land decisions that are being made at the land bank. It might mean trying to increase the number of Black and brown people who are on this advisory board, right? So we try to infiltrate spaces where decisions are being made and shift the power in those spaces, and bring more of our people in those spaces, and in the process, try to redirect resources and power in favor of our community.
We've written an agroecology manual. We've also co-authored the city's first urban agriculture plan. We've held food brigades in the city during the height of COVID. We've done a lot of work to bring growers together and to try to address together the issues that folks are facing in the city.
Yeah, the urban agriculture plan was co-authored by us at Soil Generation and a planning firm called Interface Studio. It was commissioned by Parks and Rec. So that means that the Department of Parks and Rec raised the money to pay us to create this plan. It's essentially a 200-page book that is full of extensive research, history, data that gives the context of urban agriculture in Philadelphia, and also lays out a 10-year plan for building a new and more just local food system. The thing about the plan that's powerful is it involved community input, and it turned community narrative into something that has like the stamp of approval that the city provides. Unfortunately, what communities say doesn't often get taken seriously without being backed by some kind of institution. So this plan has data that tells the same story that our communities have been saying, but now it's data. Now it's, has the validation of like being a city document. So we're hoping that communities will use the plan to almost be like a menu to say, hey, city government, like I want this, it's like a fully laid out plan. Unfortunately, like a plan is not the same as it being implemented. So the real work starts now. The plan has been written, it's comprehensive, it's big, it's great, and now we need community help to make those things real, to hold the city accountable to making those things real. The reason I got into urban agriculture is because I felt it touched on so many social issues at once. Urban agriculture has the potential to provide jobs and economic stability, which I feel is like a really big issue. So it also has the power to improve your health through being active and eating and accessing nourishing foods. It has the power to remediate soil and capture like rainwater, and really like improve local ecosystems through like creating pollination spaces for bees. And it's also a really powerful way for intergenerational relationships to pass on culture and knowledge.
And I came into this work through studying climate change and environmental justice. So it does play a huge part to have spaces where there are live plants growing, where we're communing with nature. There's also a lot of mental health connections with putting your hands into soil, with being around nature, with absorbing sunlight. There are some specific scientific, contributions, correlations that we can point to, but urban ag is so much more. It also, having green space also reduces violence in our communities. It gives us something beautiful to look at, spaces that we can gather in, and it also makes people want to respect their area more. If they see that there are flowers and food that's growing, it will make it less appealing a space to just dump your waste in, or to bring your riffraff to. It is not just a hobby for folks to do, it's actually a way to sustain our lives, to continue our cultures, and to have sovereignty